Hi there, I'm Margaret Lewin and welcome to Margaret Lewin Quilting. Today we're going to make these pillowcases. The top of it is fabric from Olivia's quilt. This is part of the me and my sister collection. And then the bottom of it is fabric that I actually had left over. So this is what we're going to be making today. What I'm going to do first is make the band that goes around the top of the pillowcase for Olivia's quilt. Now these are the fabrics that I'm using in Olivia's quilt. So what I've done is I've taken a total of 24 of my blocks. So this is a 4 3/4 inch print and a 4 3/4 inch white block. These were left over from my Olivia's quilt project. So that's how I'm using these up. I just can't see the scraps going to waste, and my grandchildren actually make their own beds as young as they are. Olivia doesn't yet, but Sarah does, and Sarah is right now 3 years old. So I thought I'd make nice pillowcases to go with it so that when she puts her quilt over her bed, it looks nice and made. It looks all neat and pretty. So what I'm doing is I did put a couple of extras on the end of both of these, and the reason why I did that was because I want to stagger my seams. I do not want to worry about perfectly lining them up. I want them staggered. And in order to do that, I had to put an additional one on the end of every single one of them. I do have my piece of pillowcase right here. This is the actual pillowcase itself. This is just the band. And this is cut at 28 by the width of the fabric, so 40 or 41. So that's what that one is. And this is my band that goes around the top. So what I'm going to do is just flip these over. I'm not lining up my seams because I just want to sew over them. I am going to pin them so that my folds do stay down and don't get crossed. I'm going to sew this all up, and then I'm going to come back and show you how I'm going to go about pressing. So what I've done at this point is I've sewn my two strips together, and you can see that they're offset. Okay, I'm going to set my seam because it's always important to set your seams, and I'm just doing the length of it. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it over because this is what works great for me. And I'm going to start, and I'm just going to make the fabric roll so that it stays. Whoops, I'm out of shot. Hang on just a second and I'll be in shot so that you can see me. So what I do is I just take it and I fold it back. That's it. And I let the iron do a lot of the work for me. So I'm not having to do a ton of it. Not that there's a ton of work in pressing, but I want the iron to do most of it. So I'm just going to keep rolling it back so that my seams come out flat, and I'm looking to have no rollovers here on the back side. Okay? Do that on the entire piece, and then I'm going to spray it with some of my Mary Ellen's Best Press, and I'm going to spray it on the back side. In our group on Facebook, somebody told me that they always put their starch or their sizing on the back of their fabrics. And then what happens is when you press it or iron it, it comes up through the fabric, which I'm going to start trying that and see how it works. Because I'm always open to new ideas. And I thought that was a really nice little tip that someone shared. So here you can see I'm just pressing it down. And it is working out very nicely. Very, very nicely. So there's that. My next step is I'm going to take my pillowcase itself, which is right here in front of me. Here's my pillowcase. And I'm going to line it up right sides together. I have removed the selvage, so there's that. And you take it and you put it right sides together, okay? I'm going to put it down, and I'm just kind of centering it between the fabrics that I have there. So right about here looks pretty good. And I'm just going to pull this up so that it's nice and straight, or as straight as I can make it. And then this is my fabric, and I'm going to roll it. And when I roll it, I'm going to try to roll it tightly so that I don't have to worry so much. When I made the other one, I didn't roll it tight enough, so consequently I kept having to have to reach between the layers and stick the excess back in there. So now I'm going to take the bottom part of my little, I'm going to take the bottom part of this. Now remember, this is the border across the top of your pillowcase. I'm going to roll it over, and then I'm going to pin it again. I'm going to sew right down this line all the way, and then I'll be back to show you what it looks like. I've sewn my tube that has my pillowcase inside of it. So all I'm going to do now is reach in there and pull out all of that extra fabric. And this does take a minute. It's just, you know, you just got to be a little patient with yourself as you yank on all of it, because there is quite a bit of fabric in there. I'm going to pull it all out. And once I get it pulled out, what's going to be important in the next step is to really get it pressed nice and flat again. Because your final step in this is sewing what's called a French seam. And if anybody's ever sewn a French seam before, lots of times tailors use it when making clothing. Couture seamstresses, or they use it a lot too. So here we go. Now you notice that I do have additional fabric here, and it's because I didn't want these two to line up perfectly. I wanted them to be staggered. So I'm going to take my fabric and just flip it over on the pressing station. And now what I'm going to do, because I wasn't able to set my seams this time, let me pull this down farther into view so that you can really see what I'm doing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take where I'm going to take right here where my seam is, and I'm just going to kind of pinch that right between my fingers. And I'm going to hold that as I sew, and I'm going to hold it tight so that I can press, and I'll be right down into the camera view so you can see in just a second, so that I can press this and have a nice seam on this top of the pillowcase, which that's going to be important. Okay, so here I go, just getting it all nicely pressed. Shove it down so that you can see a little bit more of it. Again, just rolling it between my fingers to bring it out so that it lays flat. And it's really easy to do. It's just kind of fussy work, I think. You'll notice that I tend to iron quite a bit, but I like to iron, and I think it really helps my work come out nicer because it's ironed and it's nice and flat, and just seems to work out good. It's ironic because I really started sewing more in the garment type sewing, where you're trying to make a piece of fabric mold around a not flat surface, and now I quilt, which is trying to take a piece of fabric and not make it rounded. You want it flat. So I guess if we can achieve both of these two different techniques, we've done pretty good. So here we go. There. So now that's done. I'm just going to press the rest of my pillowcase here a little bit. I'm going to turn it over and press from spray it on the back, and then I'll roll it around and press it on the front. But I'm going to spray it pretty good. I'm not quite overdoing it, but I am putting quite a bit on. I turn it over, and then I'm going to press it. And once I've pressed it, I'm going to have to take it over to the cutting table and make sure that I cut these ends off so that they're nice and straight. I want them to be nice and straight so that when I sew it. And then when I do go to put it back on the machine to sew it, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be putting wrong sides together first. And I'm going to start at the top. I'm going to sew all the way down the two sides. They're the one side because it'll be folded in half. And then across the bottom. Then I'm going to trim in a couple of spots. And then after that, I will turn it right sides together. And that is when I will be doing the last stage of the French seam. So I'll be back in just a minute. And I'm actually going to take you right over to the sewing table with me this time. All right, so what you want to make sure of when you line your pillowcase up, remember, you're putting wrong sides together, which is totally against our grain. But you want to line up this part of the little bit of the sleeve that goes on the top with the sleeve on this side, because that's the only place that it's really going to show how you've sewn it and that you've got your seam straight. What I'm going to do now is get ready to sew the second seam. Now this is what creates the French seam, because I'm going to sew right sides together, and all of this raw seam here is going to be enveloped behind this new seam. But there's one spot that I want to make sure is like really pristine and good, and it's this at the top. I've trimmed it a little bit, but what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to take it and kind of, let's see if you can see what I'm doing. I'm going to take it and I'm just going to kind of fold it down a little bit. Then I'm going to bring my top pieces together just like that, and see what's happened. I've put that seam right inside of that casing. I am going to pin this good because I'm going to use a stronger pin actually. I really want it to stay tucked in there so that you can't see any of my raw edges. Then the rest of it, I'm just going to keep sewing down. Now my first seam, I'm going to just keep sewing down it. My first seam was a 1/4 inch seam, and this one I'm going to do just a little bit more. So on my machine, it's going to be just, I would say, not quite the, well, I would say about the 3/8 mark on my sewing machine is where I'm going to sew. So I'm going to put that underneath my presser foot with my scissors, and hopefully, I think, let me make a little adjustment. I don't think you can quite see what I'm doing. There, now you can see me. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to sew around again. And this is going to create a beautiful French seam. Now I am starting out with, I'm going to lift my presser foot a little bit. And then I'm going to stick my little plastic guide marker underneath the back of my presser foot so that I can take up any of the bulk. I'm going to stick that under there. Here we go. Whoops, wrong side. That was my problem. All right, and then what that's going to do is help keep my presser foot high enough to compensate for this huge thickness that's going on here. I am going to backstitch. It's very slowly, because I also do still have my needle in there, which I don't. Now I can remove it. So here we go. Come down. Now there's another spot that I could have that same problem with, and that's coming up right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this, which is my front part. I'm just going to leave it under there just a little bit till I can get it guided. Just a little. I like to have it there. It just seems to help me. And if I go slowly, it helps even more. So here we go. I've managed through all of that. Down to my bottom. I am going to take it all the way down and then back stitch. And take it again. Turn it around and make sure that I'm lined up good, which I am. And now I'll just keep right on sewing. Little back stitch again, and then I'm going to take this out, clip my thread. I should have used one of my little anyhow, so there we go. I'm going to turn this right side out and then I'll show you what it looks like. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you like this video and would like to see more like them, please do give this a thumbs up. And if you haven't already, please do subscribe. There should be a little red button, I think, right up there. And if you're not certain how to subscribe, there's a tutorial on my page, and you can go take a look at that. I'll link it in the show notes below. So go find the pillowcase pattern on my website, and make sure you pop on out to Facebook and join our sewing group. It's called Margaret Lewin Quilting. And I'd love to see you out there. Thanks so much and have a great day. Bye.